Now I'm very excited to bring up Jason Starr, who you might know him from On the Revel, a large cannabis advocacy community building resource and group. Peter's here too, who has an extensive background in human rights and policy. And IAmQueens, who is uh, from New York originally, right? Yes, IAmQueens. Grew up in the foster. Yes, we're so happy to have him. He grew up in New York's foster care system and has so much to share. I will let Jason get into it.
How y'all doing tonight? Let's give it up for the last panel. That was fire, right? My name's Jason. I use he and him pronouns. I am an attorney. I'm an activist, social entrepreneur. In the daytime, I spend my time representing LGBTQ youth in court across the country, mostly challenging discriminatory state laws. Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas, and the list goes on. And I also am the Chief Impact Officer of On the Revel, which is the okay. We got Revel fam in the house, which is the parent company for a collection of curated educational and networking events, all aimed at democratizing market information about the legal cannabis market. And some of you may know me from my previous time in government. I was one of the co-authors of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. So really, really happy to be here, but today is not about me. Well, every day is about me, but you know. Really today is about my good brother here, Larry IAmQueens Smith. Larry Malcolm Smith is an activist, an organizer, a movement strategist, a social justice leader, and an advocate for youth in the foster care system. Larry's been at this for a long time, even though he's in his early 20s. And we're going to dig into a lot today about his experiences surviving the foster care system here in New York City, how that really has grounded and rooted his activism, and more recently, the impact of the violent murder of his brother, Jordan Neely, which I know we and everyone in this country and across the world watched live on television or on our computer or phone screens. And so, as a grounding exercise for us in this space, I do want us to just take a moment of honor and remembrance for Jordan and for all of our LGBTQ youth who are housing unstable, who are unhoused, who can't hear us right now, but who hopefully will feel a little bit of the love that we have for all of them. So let's just take a moment. You ready? All right, all right. So you told me today that you always start with gratitude. So what are you grateful for today? Just start it off. Yeah.
Sorry. How's everybody doing? Just before I answer the question, thank you to all of the panelists from that last panel. You all did amazing. I honestly felt heard as a youth, honestly, because I am a Gen Zer and a youth advocate and somebody that is basically fighting for others that are younger than me, but still going through the system. And I just felt like I was very much heard. So I wanted to start off by just giving gratitude towards that, giving gratitude to Jason as well. We had a phone call before I came here. He didn't even know this, but I had an anxiety attack, and it wasn't his fault, but I definitely did smoke some weed, of course, before I got here. And I just feel very uplifted. And just to go into detail, you guys, I am the foster brother of Jordan Neely. Foster brother, as in like somebody that took Jordan Neely and not even just mentored him, but I was the mentee. Anytime Jordan would go on the train stations to impersonate Michael Jackson, he did that while being homeless and houseless with me. Currently, you're speaking to somebody that is a houseless youth, but is also a youth that has been going across New York City to find an apartment and to find a home. I don't want you all to look at me and look at me as a sad sob story, but to express gratitude today, to look at me as a walking testimony, because at times we get looked at as sad sob stories because people have capitalized off of our trauma to elevate other people's platforms. And I'm pretty sure you all know this, especially as LGBTQ identified. Having to be here today and to hold community space with you, Jason, and everybody in this audience to take up a lot of just personal space within our own community, it's a blessing. Um, I have not been okay lately, not even just because my foster brother is gone, but because this is an injustice that I was fighting before death had even happened. And as I've been fighting on the front lines, speaking about what us as foster care youth, homeless youth, houseless youth, LGBTQ identified youth go through, I've been completely ignored. I've been pushed out of the churches. I have been pushed out of the homes. I've been in 23 foster homes, including group homes, covenant homes, children's centers, men's shelters, and anything you can think of. I've definitely had gotten a lot of support, predominantly from the LGBTQIA plus centers, such as like the Alley Foyer, the Door. I felt like those were safe spaces, but there's an expiration date towards that. And it's unfortunate, right? So to be here today, my gratitude is that not only are you speaking to an houseless youth, but you're speaking to an HBCU youth. You're speaking to a senior college student who has a cumulative GPA of a 3.92 and just finished their junior semester of a 4.0. On top of that, there has been a lot of homophobia that has been going on at my HBCU because, and this is to anybody in this room that is from down south, I'm pretty sure you guys know how conservative it definitely is to be able to live in your truth. And for some reason, to be, down there, it's hard to be able to build community spaces. The only spaces I'm able to build community with is the folks that are completely out about their homosexuality, queer sexuality, our trans siblings, as well as those that identify as non-binary and gender non-conforming. Again, to answer this question, my gratitude is being able to sit here and not only just feel like I'm being heard, but I hope that at the end of the night, each and every one of you think about adopting a child. I don't want nobody to be taken in as a foster care youth like me, because ACS has made at least $1.7 million off of me, and there's 28,000 other foster care youth that are just like me, even aged out, and they're being taken advantage of, being put in as human sex trafficker, child sex traffickers. I had pretty much forced myself to come out the closet from being raped at the age of 5 years old. And it wasn't from a stranger. It was someone that was supposed to be a family member of a foster home. So, of course, I'm going to have trouble finding my own homosexuality. Of course, I'm going to have trouble wanting to be accepted because I've battled with rejection my whole entire life. And I'm pretty sure anybody in this room that has battled with rejection knows probably one of the most toxic traits that we all do, or maybe some of us do, is people please. Sometimes rejection can put us to a point where, and this is just what I've learned as a youth, that we're always pouring into others with an empty cup with a hole in it, and we forget about ourselves. We forget about the life that we are meant to live. We forget about the life that we deserve to be a part of. And I just feel like I've been selfless for so long that not only did I lose myself, but I gained community while losing myself, and that's my LGBTQ siblings. A lot of them have been murdered in front of my face, one of them being a Black trans woman. And what hurts me the most is that a lot of my siblings that are LGBTQ identified come out of foster care. One of them actually ran in front of the G train and committed suicide. Blood, white meat bones, and everything you can think of splattered on my face. And that was the age of 17. I would never want another youth to basically go through that type of trauma. And we're not responsible as not even just being a part of BIPOC communities, but as Black people, period, and brown and indigenous and Asian folks and people of color, we're not responsible for the lack of therapy resources that are in our communities. It's very hard to find an LGBTQ identified therapist. It's very hard to find a therapist that is Black trans women or Black trans men identified, or someone who's a person of color. It's very hard to find these type of things. And for me, I just felt like not only was myself and Jordan railroaded through the system, but we just felt like we never had nobody to hear us. And I'm sorry to say this, I'm just like so tired of being on the front lines, because I realized that that's not something that I would want my own children to go through. And yes, I want to adopt a kid. Yes, I want to say the word adoption, because I don't think foster care youth should be used as capitalism. I don't think they should be used as going home to home to home with just garbage bags, being kicked out on a porch because I didn't know how to wash dishes correctly. And the part that hurts the most is, it's like being in New York City. Sometimes like we're so taught to mind our business and that hustle and bustle mentality, but my foster brother was killed on a train and everybody around just stared at it, looked at it. I had to watch it on the Shade Room. I was in school. I overdrawn my bank account to get here. I'm still currently sitting in front of you pouring out empty with a hole in it. But I'm not gonna complain about it. I'm gonna smile about it, because I feel like resilience and perseverance is key. I don't wanna just come off as if, I need a handout, or I need like someone to just basically like, not just listen, but sometimes like when someone is venting or someone expresses their mental health, I feel like other folks gaslight us. Other folks can possibly say, you know what, um, I'll give you a prime example. I don't have a problem with you being gay, bisexual, or queer, but don't try that shit with me. Or the saying, I don't agree with that lifestyle. Or the saying, what do you mean by pronouns? Or the saying, like, these are the things that we go through in our communities, and it's still going, it's still happening. And we're fighting to abolish misogyny, ephemophobia, fat phobia, biphobia, gay phobia, homophobia. We are fighting to dismantle these toxic traits, yet the NYPD has over $1 billion budget, and our siblings in foster care that are LGBTQ identified and that are living in the shelters and that are living in alley foyer, are living in the door. It's like they're underfunded. Their voices are not being amplified. You know, I came into this room and I'm honored to see magazine spreads, because I feel like, wow, like I'm not even in a magazine spread, but I feel like my voice is being heard. Because you know what, even if I'm not in the room, my feet is still in the room and my spirit is still in the room. That means Jordan's spirit is still in the room, and somebody in this room is me and Jordan's voice. And I thank each and every one of you. I thank each and every one of you that have taken the time out to literally hold and take up community space when it feels uncomfortable. I thank each and every one of you in this room who have taken the time out to see that LGBTQ youth, LGBTQIA plus youth matter, but also we shouldn't feel like we're disowned. We shouldn't feel like we have to be kicked out of our homes. We shouldn't feel like we have to be kicked out of our schools, kicked out of our churches. And when we go to the streets to find work, we can't even live there. So where can we go? We go to sex work. We go to selling drugs. We go to our siblings ODing on Tina. And it's the most traumatizing thing you would ever want to see your own siblings or your own family members going through. Where's the resources? Where's the help? Jason, I thank you for passing bills. I thank you for introducing legislation, because there are politicians out here that will probably take the credit of what you did. But we know that the power is within the people of this room. We know that the power is within everybody that has a part to play within our movement. Yes, I understand that there are folks in this room that feel like they donate. Shout out to you for donating, but please become my voice. Use that white privilege you have. Sorry if I made anybody feel uncomfortable, but literally, there are places you can go to speak for foster care youth, and you don't even realize it sounds better from you than me. I'm currently apartment hunting, and I'm getting housing discriminated just because I have an EHV voucher, a voucher that I got accepted for just a month and a half ago, almost 2 months, and I feel like I didn't get accepted if I wouldn't be speaking about Jordan Neely. I've been on that list since I was 16 years old. I'm a one-man household. I don't have kids. I've watched my siblings that are LGBTQ identified endure teenage pregnancy at such a young age. And what hurts the most is they're fighting to get into spaces of Planned Parenthood where they can't even get an abortion. They can't even at least get tampons or condoms. This is the most viciousness thing I've seen in my life. And it all stems from foster care, white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism, and anything you can think of. And I'm going to end off right there.
Yeah. Yeah. You you said a lot, and I'm gonna tease out a couple of those things. The first is I don't know that a lot of people really have a sense of what it's like growing up in the foster care system. I mean, your bio talks about 23 different homes. You gave us a little bit, like, talk a little bit, just like bring us into what it was like for you, for Jordan, for others in the system, up to and including aging out. That's an important piece of it, because I also don't know that folks understand. Okay, so foster care essentially means the state is like, we're your parents now. We're responsible for you now, and then at 18, the ball just drops. So maybe 21 now in terms of some services. So just bring us into what it's like growing up in that system, and then what happens when that inevitable day hits, when the state says, okay, we're no longer responsible for you. What does that look like?
Yes. Thank you, Jason. So to give you guys like a big background and backstory, I've been in foster care since the age of 2 years old. Jordan has been in foster care since his mother died. The way his mother died was very traumatizing. I know a lot of folks probably did their research or didn't do their research, but when Jordan's mother died, it like literally pushed him into being in abusive foster homes with me, where we were being raped, slaved, neglected, food insecurity, teenage pregnancy, depression to an all-time high, PTSD rates to an all-time high, sexual assault, verbal, emotional, and physical toxic masculinity. Anything you can think of, we've been through it. One of the foster homes I lived with Jordan was in Marcy Projects. The home that I lived in Marcy Projects at the time was an abusive foster home, and me and Jordan basically took our time to do everything we could to people please. As we would people please, we would get taken advantage of. We didn't have haircut money. We didn't have laundry money. We didn't have money to at least go outside to go on school trips. You know how back in the day you would have to pay for school trips but bring lunch food, and it would say on the school trip, it would like on the school trip list, as your parents sign you off that you can go on this school trip, it will say like bring a bag of lunch. We didn't have money to even bring a bag of lunch. So foster parents would use the money that was supposed to be given for us on like casinos. They would take the money on vacations, and me and Jordan would be stuck eating TV dinners while the foster parents' biological children would eat home cooked meals. So that's kind of like what we have to go through as like foster care youth. We have to go through neglection. We have to go through having to see favoritism in front of our face. Times me and Jordan have eaten watermelon and popcorn just because there were foster parents that didn't want to feed us the way we should have been fed, or the way they could have fed us, but they just had a different way or shape or form of feeding us. And it's just taking advantage of the system. We know that foster care youth in America not only matter, but if ACS was really serious about bringing children back to their families, they wouldn't kick us out with garbage bags. But not only that, me and Jordan aged out with just a Metro card to survive. And if you realize how the system is, you look at Rikers Island, right? When these men that are in Rikers Island, they age out with just a Metro card to survive. Aging out as in like they do their time, they can't afford bail. The cash bail system is probably so messed up. Some people are selling their food stamps to make their money to pay for their children. Some people are probably giving up their rent. Some people are doing any type of sacrifice. And I say sacrifice because in a way that's what Jordan, like, I'm not gonna say Jordan would sacrifice his way to help others, but I'd say Jordan would put other people first before him, and he would put himself last. And at times it sucks because it's like, I don't want to say any of my siblings do that because I get those traits. And it's to the point where we forget about our own selves. And to just touch on the foster care system and like the aged out process, the food neglection process, the food insecurity process, the sexual assault, the verbal, emotional abuse that we go through, it just feels like, why wasn't I aborted? And I'm sorry to even just say that right now, But like all of this trauma at 2 years old, for all of this pain, all of this sexual assault, my childhood is damaged. And I'm still fighting depression. I'm still fighting suicide. But I'm not taking medicine. I'm smoking weed. And I'm damn sure proud of that. I'm proud of that because,
And plant medicine.
and absolutely, and I'm extremely proud because you know what, folks can look at me and judge me because that's what they do to all of us. They always judge us. They judge us because we live in our truth and they want to be us so fucking bad. That's why. Because if you really want to talk about it, the homophobia comes from people that are DL themselves, people that are scared to live in their truth themselves. I'm at a point right now in my life, not even just as a youth activist, an abolitionist, a youth LGBTQ freedom fighter, but the next person that just says to me, I ain't with that gay shit. I don't agree with that lifestyle. I don't have a problem with you being gay, but you a fag. The next person that says that, the next response I'm gonna give is come out the closet or I'm coming out for you. Because it's probably something you're hiding, and I'm just gonna have to like literally just ask you, do you wanna fuck? Because, and excuse my language, you would rather fuck us but not fight for us. And that's what they do to our black trans women. Our black trans women are out here fighting for their fucking lives on the front lines and they are being killed. And there's barely a whisper being spoken about it. Black trans women are in sex work. Now let's understand that sex work is work. I just want to state that. Sex work is survival. We don't know what other people go through in their lives. We don't know the pain and the suffering that they go through, but the least we could do is have a good heart to just listen. Sometimes when someone is venting, don't just push your problems on them. Oh, well, maybe you could have did this better. You should embrace failure. I get that we should embrace failure because maybe life is full of disappointments, but we should be celebrated, not separated. And I think at times that's what we go through as LGBTQIA plus identified folks. And I just hope, yeah.
So you talk a lot. You told us your right now story about being unhoused and the just struggle. You have a Section 8 housing voucher. It's a voucher that's specifically for young people who have aged out of the foster care system. Yet you're out here in the market, you're facing rampant discrimination. Everyone in here should know that in 2019, New York State passed a law that prohibited discrimination in housing based on what we call source of income, right? All money, all revenue going toward housing is valid, and you can't discriminate and fail to rent or fail to lease to somebody because they have a Section 8 voucher, because they have an HPD voucher. But you're still facing that level of discrimination. We talk about the system failures that you experience in the foster care system that are now cascading when you go and experience it in our affordable housing system, right? And everybody here knows that we are in a once in a generation housing crisis in this city right now. Recent reports say 50%, half the people that live in the 5 boroughs cannot make rent, basic food expenses, basic healthcare, and transportation. That's it. Those are just the basic things to live. And if you look to the left and look to the right, 1 in every 2 people in this room right now can't afford that basic shit, right? That is a fundamental flaw in the system architecture in a city that's supposed to be the richest one in the country and potentially in the world. And as we were talking earlier today, I said we understand that Daniel Penny was the last link in the chain when it came to Jordan, but we can trace Jordan's death back to systems failures like the fact that when he left, when he was a young boy leaving the foster care system, right, that he had to walk out into an environment like this and compete or try to get housing. Just talk a little bit about the ways in which Jordan and folks like them have to live in order to survive in the city, leaving the foster care system, and why that put Jordan in the position that it put him in to be where he was in the state that he was that day.
Thank you a lot. To sit here and just digest and to really think, I would remember Jordan say, "I'd rather be alone than unhappy," because at times he felt like no other foster parents that we lived with would be able to understand the pain and the trauma he's been through at such a young age. For him to navigate aging out of the foster care system, homeless and houseless, and even living in shelters where he was being kicked out of because he was labeled as a criminal, he decided to use his God-gifted talent and ability for all of us. He dressed up as Michael Jackson. He would always do not just Billie Jean, but he would do every album you would think. And of course, he was asking for money. Of course, he was asking for a penny. He was asking for anything you can think of because our foster parents wasn't feeding us. Our foster parents wasn't giving us Metro cards. Our foster parents wasn't basically taking us clothing shopping. Our foster parents wasn't giving us food. These types of things that we were going through, I'm talking about we were being taken advantage of by our own people, but by our own people that were predominantly church folks. And just to even talk about that, it makes not even just me and Jordan look at Christianity different, but we looked at Christianity as a system because let's talk about it. White supremacy is a system. Aging out of foster care homeless is a system. Houselessness in our communities that are LGBTQ identified. Nobody deserves this type of trauma at such a young age. I want to just share like a lot of memorable moments that Jordan was able to be a part of. And I'd say he attended my middle school graduation, very honored and thankful because he was the only one who showed up and I couldn't even understand or know where my mother was living at that time. My dad was actually in jail. He also stood with me until my high school career, but he wasn't able to make the high school graduation because that's when he went back into homelessness. He got kicked out of a shelter because he fought because somebody stole from him. And these are like the conversations that are uncomfortable that we have to have because it's very like alarming that some elected officials think that the shelters keep us safe, but the shelters is literally like basically high upper echelon security that are cops that treat us as if we're beneath them, as if we're basically belittled by them, that treat us as if like a crabs in the barrel type of mindset and mentality. You know what I mean? Where they're pulling us back. Because while Jordan was in the shelter, people labeled him as a criminal, but Jordan got his GED. Not only did Jordan get his GED, he was actually trying to get himself into college. He just didn't have that support. So of course he's gonna go on the train, impersonate Michael Jackson to make a dime. Of course he's gonna make friends and community that are LGBTQ identified in front of Times Square, in front of Good Morning America, and majority of them are homeless, houseless, doing anything they can to basically, make something to eat, get something to eat to survive. Living in New York, it feels like survival mode for all of us. We have to look at our every shoulder, left to right, hustle and bustle. Sometimes there's not even no hospitality. And if there is, we take ourselves and carry ourselves with grace and we're very grateful and thankful, but it's kind of rare to see. And for me, just to end off this question, I definitely want to like dig deep into like how as we're a part of the foster care system, we're getting told broken promises of like free dental, eye doctor appointments. I'm in at least $31,000 of college debt. I'm pretty much sure everybody else in this room is in some type of college debt. But what hurts is when you're a ward of the state and you're a ward of the court and you get told by caseworkers, legal aid attorneys, superintendents, ACS facilitators, and even family court judges that college is going to be free for you. You don't have to come out of pocket for nothing. Well, if that's the case, why are myself and other foster care aged out youth that are homeless are in debt? And this is how we're in debt. And I'm just going to give you the biggest breakdown to end off this question. We're in debt because school is our biggest lifeline. When we're aged out homeless, we're living in our truth. Majority of us are probably sex working, selling drugs. Some of our siblings are on Tina. Are we going to leave them? No. We're going to stay with them and hold community space and have these types of teachings because at times what we don't understand is that not all of us are dealt the right cards, but that doesn't mean we can't reshuffle our deck for a better outcome in life. And at times I think it's important to live life with no regrets. We may not be good for everybody, but we are good for somebody. Somebody is probably going to hear our story and say, you know what? He, they, she, him went through that. And you know what? of course, it was a negative situation, but look at them now. They're not letting that negative situation define them. And that's where the community advocacy comes in. That's where me getting arrested in courtrooms has came in. That's where me fighting in front of the Supreme Courthouse and having to call politicians out, having to testify numerous times. The part that hurts me the most is that I'm very scared and terrified for our next younger generation that are in my age bracket, but probably younger than me, because they're at a point in their lives where they feel like the people who we look up to, and I still feel like this at times, I have to be honest, no matter how much homage we pay to our older heads and our ancestors, those that are alive especially, it feels like activism is kind of like a competition to some people instead of them seeing the bigger picture that we're all in community space together to fight and execute this one social injustice cause. And it's more so like about, you know, we're being distracted by like agitators. We're being distracted by like the social media presence because this person has a bigger clout presence than I do. So it puts you in a rejection, you know, type of setting. And it's just like, I'm very much dedicated on doing the work. And that's all I care about, because one day my foster care siblings are going to be freed, but they're not just going to be freed. They're going to be with apartments and cribs, and they're going to get jobs, and I'm going to teach them how to at least get their credit score, apply for a credit card, because these are the things we are not being taught. These are the things that we are basically being, I could you not, like, taken advantage of. Our humanity, our human rights, our LGBTQ rights. LGBTQ rights are human rights. And these are rights that everybody in this room should be able to fight for, even those that probably do not hear me. If you don't identify within the community, be an accomplice and co-conspirator and stand the fuck up. More siblings are dying. More youth are dying. Anybody that's LGBTQ identified is predominantly homeless, and they are being harmed. Sometimes when we walk up to people who battle with schizophrenia, sometimes our responses is, I don't know why that person just wants money from me. But we're putting a statement that they want money from me, but they don't want money, they want love. They want love and they want respect, but they want organic love. They want love where you could be able to sit with them outside of this store, this bookstore, and just sit on a sidewalk while they have their poster in their hand asking, can someone come to speak to me? And these are the things that I would do. And the crazy part is I did it while living in a shelter, while living in a covenant home, living in a group home. There were times that I got a lot of my trans siblings that were homeless sex workers that were couch surfing into a shelter. And I hated to do it because it's like, damn, I'm in a shelter and they treat me like shit, and I got to get this type of person, this family member, and I got to watch them get treated like shit. But I did it because I'd rather see them housed in a kind of way, even though they're not housed, they're houseless, than rather than seeing them on the streets, catching HIV, getting AIDS, chlamydia, gonorrhea, because they don't have no access to free healthcare, y'all. They don't have no access to no type of legal documentation. Why is it that me and Jordan aged out with no birth certificate, no social security card, no passport, no state ID? I still don't have my license. I had to do all of this by myself. Took out loans for it at that. So we live in pretty much a predominantly capitalistic society, but where are the folks that were at the Met Gala that basically was in front of like Anna Wintour and all these rich people faces? Where's the pull up for those that are eating with you that are battling injustice? For example, like, I'm pretty sure everybody in this room has friends from other races, other sexes, and other religions. Right? My question is a lot of these people want to smoke with you, they want to eat with you, they want to make bread with you. They probably want to do a lot of these things with you, right? Foster care injustice and foster care aged out youth, finding them a home should be their problem too. Sometimes we don't help other people because we look at it like their story ain't my story. I didn't have to go through that, so why am I helping? But sometimes we should be able to understand that there's always a way where we can help someone. It's just a matter of how badly we care to help. Help can be in so many different ways. You may not even have to help financially. You can help me emotionally. You can help me spiritually. You can help me physically. You can help me get into therapy. You could help anybody, not even just me, but any homeless and houseless youth person. Like literally a lot of these community organizations, nonprofit or not, are very low funded because they're in front of Mayor Eric Adams' office demanding for foster care youth and America's humanity and LGBTQ folks within the foster care system to be recognized. And it hurts because a lot of times we're in these communities and we don't feel safe. And to even pick on when you asked about the housing discrimination that I'm going through, you guys, I'm currently apartment hunting and I'm doing it by myself. And it's a lot of stress, but I know that, God has a plan. I know that literally whoever our higher power is, I just know that literally positivity is going to come from this, but at the same time I'm still anxious, I'm still scared, I'm still nervous because as I'm going through this housing discrimination, the landlords and real estate developers, they don't even want to talk to me because I have a voucher because of other past clients they've dealt with. And it takes me to tell them, well, yes, I have a voucher, but I am an HBCU student. I am a senior student majoring in African American studies with a concentration of entrepreneurship and a minor of political science. I am somebody that is a part of the LGBTQ club at my HBCU, where we were able to create a ball in our HBCU. And guess what, y'all? Republicans were blocking us from creating that ball. Republicans were blocking us from passing school bills in our HBCU that are still introduced but haven't even been passed. They're looking at us like we are a target. But you know why, guys? That's because there's an anointing on all of us. They see that we have a God-gifted talent and an ability, and they are scared of us. They are scared the way we unionize, the way we come together. They are scared the way we mobilize together, and they are literally scared for their lives because we live in our own fucking truths. And we are real as anybody can be. And that's because we went through rejection, we went through hell, and we said we're not going to be there no more. Same thing with Marsha P. Johnson, James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, Audre Lorde, and the list goes on. Sylvia Rivera. We know that our ancestors are smiling at us. And I just want to end off with that.
Let's give it up. So, as I've followed your activism and learned a little bit more about the way that you move through the world, like you preach the gospel of collective action, right? You talked about just your references to like unions and that level of organizing, and I think for a lot of us, like cannabis is central to like community creation, right? So how have you've been out in the streets, you've spoken, provided testimony. I mean, you've hit it from a couple of different ways. How have you seen sort of cannabis be integrated into and maybe central to like organizing and activism in social issues, social justice?
I feel like I love this question. That's number one. Cannabis has been introduced to me because, damn, the times where we were fucking shit up out on these streets, even in the name of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, we were also talking about the black trans women and black trans men's names that were barely even spoken about. Tony McDave, Raya Milton. There's so many names of trans siblings that were from down south and across the Midwest and anywhere you can think of. And we just like took the time out to not only organize, but yes, we bought cannabis. Like, yes, we had these community spaces where we smoked weed and we were able to just have a ball and just be at peace. I personally felt like going to the pier to see the balls. I haven't been to the balls at the pier in so long, but that was my first time during the time of when we were fighting for Tony McDave. We also lost another one of our trans siblings named Tommy. I don't know if a lot of folks in this room know Tommy. And like, she was fucking phenomenal. I'm talking about she was out there with us when a lot of our community members like myself were basically incarcerated. She was out there in front of jail support. She was out there giving water, food. And these are the conversations that we need to have, because like we need to be able to hold space for Tommy. We need to be able to hold space for a lot of our Black trans activists and community organizers, even those in this room who probably know our beloved sister and our Black mother, Queen Jean. You know, like they're targeting our Black trans siblings. They're targeting a lot of the folks within our communities. So of course we're gonna go to cannabis. Of course we're gonna go to weed. Of course we're gonna find a way where we could be able to just be at peace. For example, I had left New York January of 2022, and I don't want this to break anybody's heart. When I got to North Carolina at my HBCU, within the first 2 months, I had a stroke. And literally, it was a stroke of a broken heart. And I didn't realize that when I went to the doctor, I had a stroke, because for some reason I fainted. But I fainted and I woke up and I ended up on a stretcher. And I thought I just fainted. But I was told by the doctor that I have like an 87 percentile to 95 of PTSD and trauma, where to the point it's higher than those that come out of the military. And it's really because I was pouring out from empty, just like Jordan, putting our whole lives on the front lines. And there were people that took advantage of our trauma, that took advantage of what we were going through, that smiled in our face, that said, hey, you know, we got y'all backs. But there was times we organized rallies, press conferences, protests, boycotts. And let's be real and let's be honest. The politicians that came out used it for a photo op. And it broke my heart, because we are the people that put in our votes to our local elected officials. And I think our local elected officials at times can feel like, hey, you know, you guys work for us, but they work for us. We as the people have the most power that we could ever have. And at times people may say the revolution will be televised, but I always felt like the revolution will be organized. And I feel like it will not be televised. It's just something you have to keep in your mind. Mental is such a big thing, and I'm working on it my damn self. But the change that I've seen in this movement is truly amazing, because in the wake of, I don't know if you guys remember Micaiah Bryant. She was also a foster care child that had a knife, and she protected herself. And I believe the police killed her. Or yes, and it hurts, because it's the same thing with Pride. I didn't feel comfortable being around police at Pride, seeing that the police were beating the shit out of our siblings. Why is it that I'm in Washington Square Park, one of my homeless houseless siblings, who I still keep in contact with, who is an actual sex worker, we're having a conversation, and all of a sudden a cop comes up and says, bitch, move. Well, guess what? I said, who the fuck are you talking to, sir? Oh, you better shut the fuck up, or you can end up in them handcuffs right there, or you can get into the paddy wagon. And these are just the things, the viciousness of just the toxicity that our siblings are going through. And it kind of stems back to me putting this with why we do cannabis. So when you go to Washington Square Park and you see our siblings smoking weed, when you see our siblings having community spaces where they're just being able to create Black trans joy, or just queer joy, or just being able to have beautiful interactions with those that are around them, that just love them for them. That's all somebody wants to be, is feel accepted. Like, why is it that we all have to fight just to show that our existence matters? Like, can you imagine that? Proving your existence and why it should fucking matter? Black, indigenous, people of color, Asian folks, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, anybody who's LGBTQ identified, period, have been here since the beginning of fucking time, so get to it. Thank you.
Okay, I got two more quick questions for you, because I know we got to make sure we give people time to support Housing Works Cannabis. As a reminder, Housing Works started in 1990 with the motto "Housing is Healthcare." Right? I don't work for Housing Works, by the way. I have volunteered in the past as a volunteer lawyer, but I think it's apropos for our conversation that we're here in a place that recognizes that we would not medicate our way out of the height of the AIDS crisis, but that we would have to really focus on the root causes, housing being or housing instability being chief among them. So one of kind of building on what you just talked about. I think activists also have to be visionaries. You got to be harm reduction, right? You gotta keep the a lot of times state violence at bay, but you also have to have vision about like what is it that we're actually fighting for, especially now when it feels like we live in such a regressive like time and environment. So as an activist and as a person who has and continues to encounter and challenge these systems, just give us your 2-3 sentences. What is your vision for a thriving queer community, a thriving former foster care community? What does that look like when we get to freedom for you?
Thank you. That's a big, deep question. I feel like our freedom starts with not being separated. That's kind of like where it starts, where we see like our siblings that are LGBTQ, especially queer folks and trans folks, they literally just get kicked out. And it's kind of like to a point where I have to sit here and think of what I would want my freedom and my siblings to be is we deserve homes. But why do we deserve living in the projects in a pissy elevator? Because that's what our housing navigator and our housing caseworkers want for us. And that's honestly also another thing is too, some of them don't want that for us. Some of them just have over 50 clients. So they have so much on their plate. So it's hard for them to invest into just one person and see the vision that an aged out foster care or LGBTQ youth may have. And I say this because the freedom for me, right? I'm currently here apartment hunting because I have this voucher. I have a housing navigator that basically told me to my face, none of my clients have ever gotten a luxury apartment. What makes you think you're going to get a luxury apartment just because you're asking IAmQueens for a washer, a dryer, and maybe a place with an elevator? That's probably like all I was asking, or if there's a way I could get like a pet because I need an emotional support animal. So instead, my caseworker was basically telling me affordable housing units, these new luxury apartments are not for people like you. They're for the white folks. That's why New York has become so gentrified. And to hear this from a caseworker, it's just very divisive and disingenuous. And I told the caseworker, I was like, if I wasn't the age of 24 right now, I'd probably go back into my foster home and kill myself. I would probably go back on an MTA subway train and physically harm or overdose, or I'll probably go in my homeless shelter back in the day on a staircase with a blade in my hand, immediately cutting myself just because you're telling me I don't deserve a luxury apartment. I'm coming off as if I deserve this or I deserve a handout and stuff like that. And I'm just using me as an example because there's probably other foster care youth right now that have this voucher that I have and they're having trouble and they're going through the same exact thing. And it's kind of like we have people like you, literally people like you, Jason, that are like amplifying the voices of the younger generation, but are like literally speaking about, damn, how much fighting do we have to do? Because you've seen this shit for years, for centuries, and for decades, and it's still going on. So clearly, it just shows me that when more of our LGBTQ folks are being gunned down, harmed, and killed, it's like that's when people kind of wake up. And I'll give you an example. The other day I heard Eric Adams talking about Jordan Neely. And this was about like within the beginning of June. Somebody that was oppressed just walked up to Eric Adams and just said to him, how do you feel about Jordan Neely? There's people getting arrested for Jordan. There's people that are being basically thrown to like street. They're being thrown to like, I heard somebody say a stop sign because the cops were just beating the shit out of people that were protesting for Jordan. And when I went to the protest and I seen how they were treating white women, I'm so sorry, but like when I seen white women getting treated by the cops, the NYPD, the SRG, the anti-crime unit, when I seen white women getting smacked the shit out of by cops, I was like, they doing that to white women? I'm Jordan Neely's foster brother. I'm not even a family member, but I'm somebody that was homeless with him. What makes you not think they gonna beat the shit out of me? So of course they arrested me. Of course they took folks like Emily in this room. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. But like literally, like nobody deserves that. We took the time out to literally be a voice. And it's sad that our freedom of speech is not even a freedom of speech anymore for any of us, probably in this room at times, because we always feel like we're not being heard. We feel like we're being unheard, and it has to take like a riot for folks to really like wake up. It has to take like death for folks to really wake up. I've been in this movement for so long where I'm at a point right now where not only am I burnt out, but I'm pretty much sure you've been this at this same stage too, where like, are we ever gonna fully get our liberation? And what does that look like? Because sometimes, like, as an activist mindset and as you said, visionary, that's kind of like where I think of like the abolition standpoint of like, what is our new world going to look like? What is our world going to look like at times where like people are not really seeing the bigger picture of how much housing we need in New York City? People are not seeing that. You're not basically seeing no melanin, no black or brown Puerto Rican Dominicans, Italians, or you're not seeing that barely in New York City anymore. Some people are leaving New York just because they can't afford it here. And I just want to say, like, it hurts, but to answer that question, I think from an activist standpoint, I think I can just end off with saying that I never chose to become an activist, an abolitionist, an advocate, a community organizer, or a movement strategist. If anything, it chose me because I just became activated through activation. It may suck to say this, but I guess I'm learning that you must go through tragedy on your own sometimes to recognize and see that you're in a fight. And hopefully one day I'll be able to reconcile, like, and teach other folks that have been through what I've been through, or even younger than me or older than me, that there are community spaces like this bookstore where we are being able to be heard, where we do feel safe, where we do feel like we're not being taken advantage of. The last panel that was just here, I was so inspired by everybody. Like, even you said you were a stylist, and that's amazing because we need that in our community. You know what I mean? Like, I know you probably worked 10 times hard to get to where you are. You've probably embraced a lot of no's, a lot of rejections. How many of you are familiar with the show America's Next Top Model? Okay, so I'm gonna end off with this because I know we're short of time. But me and Jordan tried out for that show and we got rejected, right? But it's okay because we realized that the white people on that show were getting treated so like golden, and we were treated as like black people, basically not even just from Tyra, but from like Janice Dickinson and a lot of the folks that was on the judging panel. We're not too black enough, or like, we're too skinny. I'm a 6'6" person, and Jordan was also like 5'8", and Jordan also had braids. And in a way, like, I'm just sharing this because folks like Tyra, Mrs. J, Mr. J, and everything like that basically denounced and condemned us for just being who we are. And I'm just sharing that because to embrace no, it makes me realize that life is probably full of disappointments. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's just the cookie and how it has to crumble. But to be able to persevere through that and push through that, that's, I guess, what makes you a walking testimony, because nobody deserves to be told no at all. But maybe there is a reason why we go through it, right? And I'm just sharing this because now, as you can see, people are speaking up that have been on the show of America's Next Top Model, such as folks like Winnie Harlow, such as folks as like Danielle Evans, Yaya. There's so many other contestants that have been speaking up about that show. And you can really see that Tyra had all this energy for the contestants, but she didn't have that energy for Naomi Campbell. And that's just all I want to end off. You know what I mean? But for example.
I mean, 24 years old?
I was 24 years old.
24 years old, rising college senior. He let y'all know he had that 3.92 GPA. Yes. We're just wishing you all the best. Let's give it up for IAmQueens.
Thank you. And can we please give it up for Jason? Like, literally, Jason is doing just amazing work. Like, I'm really inspired after today, man. Thank you.
Just wake up tomorrow morning and ask yourself, what am I going to do today for us to get free? It's a good way to start your day. All right, give it up for yourself.